I was fixing up my late grandmother's house. It was an old Victorian-style house that sat on 5 acres in a very quiet and very rural part of Maine. My grandmother had passed away 2 years prior to this story taking place, and while going through her house, cleaning it out and getting ready to sell it, I kept hearing what sounded like footsteps or someone shuffling around in the crawl space directly beneath me. I shrugged it off at first, assuming it was just some small animals. But then one day I heard what sounded like distinct footsteps near the closet in the master bedroom that got my attention. The house was very old and very creaky, so much so that sometimes it sounded like there were people walking around when there was no one there. But this sound was different. This was heavy footsteps. I stopped what I was doing, listened intently, and then I heard it again. Heavy footsteps right above me, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. Then everything went silent. My skin prickled with goosebumps and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread come over me. I decided I was done for the day and locked up the house, not wanting to spend another minute inside. That creepy old house. I drove home, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling that came over me after hearing those sounds. The next day I came back with a friend of mine, Kevin, who also thought it sounded like there was someone living in the crawl space. We checked around the outside of the house and didn't see any signs of forced entry or any recent digging. As far as we knew, no one had been in the crawl space for decades, so where could the sound have come from? We decided to investigate further. Kevin brought a crow skull and flashlight, and I grabbed a hammer and chisel to break into the closet where I heard the footsteps. The closet was quite dusty and cobwebby, but it appeared to be empty. There was nothing in here at all. We looked around the room again, and then we noticed a floorboard near the closet that seemed to be slightly loose. When we lifted it up, we saw a small hole underneath. The floorboard creaked ominously as we put it back down, almost as if something underneath was shifting around. Curiosity got the better of us, and we pried up the floorboard once more and shone our flashlights through the hole. What we saw was a narrow opening leading into the dark and dusty crawl space. All we could make out were some old wooden support beams and what looked like a pile of rags. We couldn't see anything else because it was too dark, and besides, we both knew that it would be a bad idea to go back there. We figured whatever was back there had probably caused that hole to be made in the first place, and whatever it was, we didn't want to find out. Kevin put the floorboard back in place and we both agreed that we should get out of there. As we left the house, though, I couldn't help but glance back at the closet. I told myself that there was nothing back there, that it was just my imagination running wild. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the darkness below. Over the next few days, I kept returning to the house each time, hoping that the sound I'd heard was just a one-time thing. But unfortunately, the shuffling and dragging continued. Even worse, every time I returned to the house, I'd hear the sound of footsteps directly behind me. It was as if whoever or whatever was in the crawl space was following me, but only in the house. Once I stepped outside, the noise stopped. The sound was driving me crazy, so I decided to confront whatever was in the crawl space once and for all. I went back to the house with a crowbar in hand, ready to break open the floorboard and find out what was making the noise. As I pried the floorboard up, a wave of stale air rushed up from the crawl space, carrying with it the scent of mildew and decay. I held my breath and looked into the darkness. There, huddled in the corner, was a small figure. At first, I couldn't make out what it was, but as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I saw that it was a girl. She was filthy and her skin was as pale as snow. She was wearing a tattered nightgown that looked like it had been soaked in dirt and grime. Her hair was matted and tangled, and her eyes were wide and frightened. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice echoing in the confined space. The girl didn't answer. She just stared at me with a look of terror on her face. I tried again, my voice softer this time. "What are you doing here?" Still, she didn't respond. I wanted to reach out and help her, but something in her eyes, something ancient and wild, made me hesitate. I took a step back, and that's when I noticed the blood. It was dried and caked onto her nightgown, but I could tell that it was blood. The girl was injured, badly. I needed to get her out of there, but she wouldn't let me. Every time I tried to touch her, she would recoil as if burned. And when I got too close, she would whisper, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves, "Don't come any closer, don't come any closer." I stopped and stared at her, unsure of what to do. Her eyes were filled with a sadness that seemed to stretch back centuries, and her words echoed in my mind. "Don't come any closer, don't come any closer." I knew I should call for help, but something kept me from doing so. I was torn between my desire to help this clearly disturbed girl and the primal fear that something in the darkness might come for me. Finally, I made the decision to call for help. But as I reached for my phone, the girl spoke again. "Please don't," she whispered, her eyes pleading. "They'll hurt me. They'll take me away." Her words hung in the air, and I hesitated. Was she telling the truth? Would calling for help really hurt her? I wasn't sure what to do. The authorities would surely want to speak to her and take her somewhere safe. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw a lifetime of pain and fear. I tried reasoning with her, telling her that I just wanted to help, but she only shook her head, her eyes wide with terror. Suddenly, she began to cry, and it was then that I saw the scratches on her arms, deep and angry, like those of a wild animal. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. Do I call for help and risk hurting her, or do I try to protect her and keep her hidden away? As I stood there torn between what I knew I should do and what my heart was telling me to do, the girl stopped crying and looked up at me, her eyes filled with a sudden resolve. She stood up, brushing dirt and cobwebs off her nightgown, and whispered, "It's too late. You can't save me now." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the crawl space. And that's when I heard it, a low growl that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The girl was right. I couldn't save her. Whoever or whatever had put her in that crawl space was after her now. For weeks afterwards, I heard her whispering in the crawl space, begging for mercy. Then one day it stopped. I boarded up the access to the crawl space and never heard a sound, or so I thought. One night I was awoken in my own home to what sounded like whispers coming from under the floorboards. I sat up in bed listening intently. Then I heard it again, soft, raspy whispers, just like the ones I'd heard from the girl in the crawl space. I lay back down, trying to convince myself that I was just imagining things. But then I heard the footsteps. They were getting louder now, accompanied by the sound of nails scratching against wood. In the morning, I went to check the crawl space, but it was empty, or so I thought. When I opened the hatch, I found a photo lying there. It was a picture of me sleeping. It had been taken from underneath the floorboards. To this day, I have no idea how she managed to get the picture, but I haven't heard the whispers in months. I boarded up the crawl space, determined to move on with my life. But every night I hear the scratching and whispering, and I can't help but wonder. Is she still down there waiting for me?